I'm introducing Mr. Ralph Pierce, who is a third-generation San Jose and began working for the San Jose Public Library 30 years ago, has been working in the California room for 15 years, and will be giving us some knowledge and wisdom today. So I want to invite him over here, Mr. Ralph Pierce. Put your hands together. Thank you.
Hello? I remember Robert F. Kennedy. I remember when he ran for President of the United States. I remember hearing that he had been shot. And I remember the sadness. Excuse me. And I remember the sadness and shared sense of loss when I heard that he had died only 2 months after the loss of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It was 1968, and I was 8 years old. My future wife was 14 and living in San Jose's east side. She had been here in St. James Park that evening that Robert Kennedy spoke to the citizens of San Jose and shared his concerns for this country. I remember that during his brief campaign that my third grade classroom conducted a poll to see which candidates our parents would be voting for. And Robert Kennedy received the most votes for that poll. The 1960s were a time of change and rebellion. Our space program, propelled by the Cold War, was in full swing. And the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act of 1964 and 1965 were passed amid racial tensions throughout the United States. These encouragements, along with the frustration with the war in Southeast Asia, fueled a kind of renaissance, a reassessment of how we do business as a people and as a nation. This season of change was reflected in our speech, in our music, our dress. There was a true desire and an optimistic effort to right the wrongs of the world, to address civil inequality, to address poverty, to address international and national and even personal differences. It was a time of great loss, but it was a time of great hope. Robert Francis Kennedy was born into a prominent Irish Catholic family on November 20th, 1925 in Brookline, Massachusetts. He was the seventh child of Joseph and Rose Kennedy. He served in the U.S. Naval Reserve from 1944 to 1946 and graduated from Harvard in 1948. He received a law degree from the University of Virginia in 1951 and then managed his brother John Kennedy's successful Senate campaign the following year. He went on to hold various government positions and then became an aide to Adlai Stevenson during his 1956 presidential campaign. From 1957, Robert Kennedy served as chief counsel to the Senate's McClellan Committee, which studied improper practices in labor management. He left the committee in 1959 to run his brother John's presidential campaign. And after that campaign, he served as Attorney General and as a close advisor to his brother, President John F. Kennedy. Following the assassination of his brother, Robert Kennedy successfully ran for senator, representing the state of New York from 1964 until his death. At the time of his 1968 presidential campaign, Robert Kennedy was 42 years old. He and his wife Ethel had 10 children, with one on the way. Unsure about opposing incumbent President Johnson, Senator Kennedy entered the presidential race late. He revealed his intentions privately during a March 10th trip to Delano, California, to meet with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta of the United Farm Workers. He formally declared his candidacy on Saturday, March 16th, 1968 in Washington, D.C. Exactly 1 week later, the senator stood in this park addressing us. And as we gather here 50 years later, we might wonder what the senator would say about the current state of our nation. What would he think of the degradation of the environment, of the cost of health care, of the wealth inequality, of the racial injustice, or the plight of our dreamers? Senator Kennedy's remarks 50 years ago touched on most of these issues. In a moment, we will listen to his speech in its entirety, but let me share one of the passages that demonstrates its relevance to issues that are now before us. Air pollution and cigarette advertising, the destruction of the redwoods, and the building of jails. All of these increase the gross national product, but in my judgment, they do not make us richer. The health of our children, the quality of their education, the intelligence of our public debate, and the integrity of our public officials. These and other intangible values are not included in the gross national product, but they are the truest indicators of wealth and really the only true measure of progress in the United States. The senator reminded us that we can make a difference, that we can put this country together again, and that we can turn its course around. With Robert Kennedy's assassination on June 6, 1968, we lost an important and influential voice, a voice that reflected a sincere and genuine desire to contribute to the betterment of our nation and our world. I would like to close with these words from Senator Edward Kennedy's eulogy of his brother. My brother need not be idealized or enlarged in death beyond what he was in life, to be remembered simply as a good and decent man who saw wrong and tried to right it, saw suffering and tried to heal it, saw war and tried to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. You know, the next person I'm gonna introduce is really a North Star to I'd say most of our elected officials here in our region, any aspiring elected officials in our region. And I'm glad to hear that somebody who was a North Star for him as he was coming up was Bobby Kennedy himself. We're gonna hear from Santa Clara County Supervisor Dave Cortese now, who's gonna give us some words, again, some wisdom on this momentous man and his history. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, this is a really, really wonderful thing, and I can't say enough about the organizers who had the idea to bring everyone together for this momentous occasion, and it is momentous 50 years later, and it's long overdue. You agree with that? It's long overdue. This is very much an honor for me for a lot of reasons, but let me just give you a couple. I'm 61 years old, and I know there are people here in this audience who are actually here for the speech. I used to go to school on 3rd and Reed. There was a school across the street from Notre Dame High School at that time. It's not there anymore, and it was called St. Mary's School. And I had just been put in that school out of public school not long before this speech occurred. And so to get to my East San Jose home, I would walk the 7 or 8 blocks from 3rd and Reed to 1st and Santa Clara, catch the bus at the Bank of America building, and start heading out to the east side. But along the way, when you were on that 7-block walk, you encountered all kinds of interesting things, right? And by the time Bobby Kennedy started his campaign, he had already served as the organizer for John F. Kennedy's campaign. He was in charge of advance work for his brother's campaign. And so a week before this speech occurred, there were advance team folks for the RFK campaign here in San Jose, day in and day out. And there were posters like those posters that you have in your hands that as a young boy, I remember seeing plastered up to the walls more and more and more each day, like a build-up to this speech. And there were people on the sidewalks and the street corners days ahead of time. I don't mean the day of, like we would probably do it now, days ahead of time, passing out plain white flyers, introducing the fact that Bobby Kennedy was going to be here. So there's no wonder that even in a much smaller San Jose than the one we live in now, 10,000 people were here. They did their advance work. I didn't get to come to the speech on that Saturday, but my father did. My father was running against a 16-year incumbent for a seat on the Board of Supervisors in that same upcoming June primary. And of course, I'm sure he, among many other candidates, felt they needed to be here for their own campaign purposes. But while he was here, one of the members of the local press had put a tape recorder, a small reel-to-reel tape recorder. You remember those before cassettes, before VCRs? You just had a little tape recorder with 2 reels on it on the podium before Bobby spoke. And after the speech, that journalist entrusted my father with those tapes. And a very short time later, passed away, unfortunately. But my father turned those tapes over to me almost immediately so I could hear the speech. And as somebody who was campaigning actively in my own father's campaign, doing all those things that we do, walking precincts and putting flyers out myself, and as somebody who remembered clearly John Fitzgerald Kennedy and his assassination, and had that feeling about what the Kennedys meant to this country and what their values meant to this country, I played that tape over and over and over again. And I don't know how many hundreds of times since then I've listened to this speech that we're going to hear the reenactment of today. But that is why this is so special to me. And can you imagine, I turned 12 June 3rd of that year. The primary was June 4th. The night of the primary, my parents left the house to go to KNTV 11. Anybody remember that? It was a predecessor to NBC Bay Area. Because what KNTV did was they covered the elections nonstop from a San Jose perspective. And even local candidates would go down there and get interviewed once the election returns came in. My father had secured a position in the runoff. Right? He was in the top 2 in the primaries, so he and my mother said, David, we're going down to KNTV. You hold down the fort, and if you want, you can watch on television. Your father's going to be interviewed. So I had the television on, waiting for my father to come on and declare victory. And instead, I saw Bobby Kennedy come on and declare victory. And a few minutes later, the news bulletins. No more interviews, no more election returns. Everything turned black, really. And somebody just asked me today how that felt. It felt nauseous. It was the worst feeling I can remember feeling, with the possible exception of the day in second grade when they told us that John F. Kennedy had been assassinated. And I'm sure so many of you felt the same way at that time. When he spoke here, among the many other things that we've already heard about today, that he talked about was decency. Decency. How long has it been since you heard a candidate on the national stage have the guts and the character and the track record to talk about decency? Because he had it himself. He didn't have to worry about anybody turning the tables on him. And if he were here today, I think he would be saying it is indecent for 17 high school students to be gunned down in their high school classroom. I think he would say it is indecent to deport 800,000 hard-working young people in this country. And I think he would say it is indecent that young black people in this country have a better shot at prison than a college education. That's indecent. That's what he would say if he were here today. And I know we would all do anything to hear him debate our national leaders today. But we're going to get a chance to hear him as if he was here by somebody who can pull that off right now. And before I forget, I'm going to introduce an actor who is going to be our presenter for that speech that was made here 50 years ago. But I want to encourage you to do something. If you listen to that tape of that actual speech, people weren't quiet. The audience interrupted that speech with applause, like you would if there was a very inspiring, charismatic political speech going on. And people even shouted out once in a while, "Hey, Bobby, go Bobby." I hope that we're as engaged in this speech today as those folks were 50 years ago. We have a part in this speech as an audience, right? We don't want to just, this isn't a movie where we be quiet. We're reenacting a speech here, and that means there's audience participation. And so let me introduce Jeffrey Brian Adams, a graduate of Bellarmine College Prep here in San Jose. A few Bellarmine fans in the audience, and I'm sure there were a few Bellarmine students here that night. And Santa Clara University. He taught high school drama for a year, and then he went to New York City, where he studied drama. He got his master's degree in fine arts, and he's performed in productions all over the country, literally coast to coast. Right here in San Jose, of course, but in San Francisco, off Broadway, on regional level, from New York City to the Pacific Coast. He comes from a long-standing, civically engaged family here in Santa Clara County in the city of San Jose. And I'm sure they're very proud. I know his father and his brother are here, and his mom, I believe, among other family members. Let's give Jeffrey Brian Adams a big round of applause. And let's treat him like Robert F. Kennedy. Come on, let's do it. Let's do it.
It must not be a matter of simply counting and recording the votes of professional politicians. If we have learned anything over the period of the last few years, it is that old solutions cannot solve the new problems that are facing this country, that face this state, and face my own state, the state of New York. For we are talking now about putting something together for this whole country, which can and we should differ on solutions, on programs and on ideas, but we can no longer afford to differ on reality. We can no longer afford to deceive ourselves. It is time we face the problems that exist in this country and exist for us elsewhere around the world with candor and with truth. And it's on that basis I run for President of the United States. If there is one overriding reality in this country, it is the danger that we have an erosion of a sense of national decency. Make no mistake, decency is at the heart of the matter. Poverty. Poverty in this country is indecent. Illiteracy is indecent. The death or maiming of brave young men in the swamps of Asia, that is also indecent. And it is also indecent for a man to work with his back and with his hands in the valleys of California without hope of ever seeing his son enter a university. That is also indecent. It is indecent for a man in the streets of New York, in Oakland, in Detroit, in Watts, to surrender the only life that he will ever have to despair. It is indecent for the best of our young people to be driven to alienation and flight, to the terrible exile of drugs and violence, to allow their hearts to wither in rage and with hatred. This, in my judgment, the year 1968, is a time to create, not destroy. This is a time to work, for men to work out with a sense of decency and not with bitterness. This is a time to begin again, and that is why I run for President of the United States. And it is why I come here to the state of California to ask for your help. I cannot win the nomination without the help of the people of California, and I ask for your help. And I think there are things to be changed in this country. We have a brave country, a courageous country, and a people who bleed with the compassion about the problems of others within our own country and elsewhere around the globe. But we are troubled, and this is a disturbing time. As we stand here today, brave young men are fighting across an ocean. Here, while the moon shines, men are fighting, dying on the other side of the earth. Which of them? Which of them might have written a poem? Which of them might have cured cancer? Which of them might have played in a World Series? Or given us the gift of laughter from a stage? Or helped build a bridge? Or build a university? Which of them would have taught a child how to read? And I believe it is our responsibility to make sure that these men live. And that is why I run for President of the United States. Our young men, our young people are our greatest natural resource. These young men in the rice paddies, the young men without jobs in the streets of our cities, the young men scattered across this country are a most important natural resource for this country. And we must bring them back into American life. And that is the reason I run for President of the United States. My friends, there are other tasks before us. It is a time to begin to rebuild the Grand Alliance, to repair the bonds of trust and confidence with those historic allies whose friendship has been the basis of our security for so many years. It is time to recall to ourselves our true responsibilities around the rest of the globe, to recognize that we cannot sit frozen and indifferent while every day 10,000 of our fellow human beings starve elsewhere in the world. That is a monstrous disproportion that we should buy 8 million new cars every year, while most of the world goes without shoes. I think there are other things we can do, and I want to join with you in doing them. And I think that it is time that we recognize that frequently in the past, we have measured our wealth and our progress by the wrong standards. Air pollution, and cigarette advertising, the destruction of the redwoods, and the building of jails. All these increase the gross national product, but in my judgment, they do not make us richer. The health of our children, the quality of their education, the intelligence of our public debate, and the integrity of our public officials. These, and in other intangible values, are not included in the gross national product, but they are the truest indicators of wealth and really the only true measure of progress in the United States. And this is the kind of wealth, that I want, and I know that all of you want for the United States of America. There is difficulty and division in our land today, but in the last 6 days I have been to Kansas and to Alabama, to Tennessee, and to my own state of New York. And now I have come to California, and I think there is a stirring of something new in the United States. It is not the creation of any candidate or leader. It is nothing that I have made, but it is a sense that there is a possibility of a different future, that the American people are discovering that they control their own destiny, and that they are going to move ahead, that they are going to make this land as they see fit, and not as it is created by others 1,000 miles away. Some of them are young in years, as I see before me here tonight. But all of them are young in spirit. They are beginning to feel that change is possible, that hope is possible, that by the work of their own hands and the love of their own hearts, they can restore that fundamental sense of decency for themselves, for each other, and for our posterity, for our children, and for the next generation of Americans. And I think that's what we're going to commit ourselves here in the state of California. There are still so many who feel that their efforts cannot make a difference. But the alienated and the apathetic alike, I believe, will dwindle in numbers and decline in strength. And finally, they too will see, as more and more are seeing every day, that we can make a difference. We can put this country together again, and we can turn its course around. And that's why I'm running for President of the United States. So I come here to ask for your help. I ask for the help of those who are proud of this country, proud of what we've done, proud of what we've contributed, proud of what we stand for. And I ask for the help of those who are dissatisfied, who are proud of all these things but yet feel that we could do better, that we're not going to stand for poverty, that we're not going to permit illiteracy, that we're going to find jobs for every young man and every young woman who wants to work, that we're committing ourselves to that. And I come here tonight to ask for your help, for those who feel that we can do better in Southeast Asia and in Vietnam, that those who feel that we don't have to be committed to the course of action that we've been following over the period of the last 3 or 4 years. I think that we can do better. I don't think that the problem is easy. I don't think that there's an easy solution and that this problem is going to disappear. But I think that we can do better. And I don't think it means raising the white flag and just withdrawing. But I think we can do far better than the course we've been following up to the present time. I think that we can demand of the South Vietnamese that if we're going to send 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds from here in the United States to fight and die in South Vietnam, we can ask the South Vietnamese to do the same damn thing. We have 2.5 months to go in this primary. I come here to ask for your help. This is a difficult campaign. I need your assistance over the period of the next 2.5 months. With your help, we are going to win the primary in June. With your help, we are going to win in August at the convention in Chicago. And with your help, we're going to win the election in November.